Hello everyone, my name is Loko and welcome to some more StarCraft 2 Legacy of the Void. Today I want to take a look at a game that I played a little while ago, and this is going to be a Zerg vs Zerg that focuses on mainly Roaches, but later on there is a transition towards Lurkers. I want to be talking about this exact transition and the reason why it is relatively uncommon to see anything but Roaches right now in Zerg vs Zerg, and that is true for both Heart of the Swarm and for Legacy of the Void. In Heart of the Swarm currently, you know, at the very top of the line, at the very highest level of StarCraft 2, you basically only see Roach versus Roach. There's the occasional Mutalisk play, or the occasional cheese, obviously, that catches the opponent off guard, or off guard rather, but the main priority of the matchup is the Roach versus Roach action that happens in the middle part of the game. And that is true for Legacy of the Void right now, because recently they actually nerfed the Ravager, as you guys will be aware of, and the Ravager right now is pretty bad. There's really no reason to make it, but it basically makes it so that the early game is once again dominated by Zerglings and Banelings, and the middle part of the game is going to be dominated by Roach versus Roach, because Mutas are very hard to pull off. They're even harder to pull off than in Heart of the Swarm, for the simple reason that Nidus Worms and Queens are a really good response to them right now, and obviously Hydralisk actually have their upgrades merged as well. So Mutalisk are basically off the table in pretty much every scenario. And Roaches versus Roaches are just sort of where it is at right now. Now there is obviously one major change to that, and that is the fact that Lurkers got added to the game as well. Generally speaking, as soon as Lurkers come out for the aggressive player or the defensive player really, they will be ahead. And that is exactly what this game is all about. We're both going to be playing a very defensive and passive game for about the first 7 minutes or so of this one. And then eventually we will both start transitioning towards that massive aggression. This looks a lot like Wings of Liberty and, well, actually Heart of the Swarm as well. But eventually you will see the new Lurker unit come into play. And I want to be talking about the reasoning why it's so difficult to get out and, you know, what happens when it does come out. So generally speaking, the reasoning why the Lurker is quite uncommon is because the unit is very expensive. What usually happens in Zerg vs Zerg is that people attack right when upgrades move out, or like when upgrades finish up. So that could be +1 missile upgrade for the Roaches, or +1 armor upgrade for the Roaches, or, you know, when the Roach speed finishes up, or a combination of all these kind of things, right? That is usually when people move out. And in StarCraft 2, timing attacks are everything. By the way, a little miss micro there by me. Not good. But timing attacks are everything. So usually people will keep moving out after the initial batch of Roaches is made, because you will constantly be finishing up more upgrades. You got the economy that you were looking for in the early part of the game, and at that point you can just keep on pushing and pushing and pushing until eventually someone either messes up their micro, either someone is caught off guard, or you will just be able to get a massive advantage because of that upgrade finishing up. Now, with that comes the fact that if you are going to be spending, I don't even know exactly how much it costs. I think it's 100 for a Hydralisk Den, and then like 150 or something to morph it into a Lurker Den. Either way, in order to actually transition towards Lurkers, it is just very expensive, and it will cost you, like, I don't know, a very bare minimum of like 10 Roaches. And usually, you know, if you play aggressive enough, if you've been trading evenly, you got an even economy, those 10 Roaches make the difference between winning the game and losing the game. So most of the time you will see in Zerg vs Zerg people just standing or sticking with pure Roach, for the simple reason that transitioning to watch anything else is too expensive. As long as your opponent is trading efficiently and he's actually playing aggressively as well, he will just capitalize on the fact that you have a, you know, a smaller economy, or not a smaller economy, an even economy, but a smaller army, because you're transitioning towards other units. Now that is especially true in Heart of the Swarm right now as well. Heart of the Swarm, the builds and the timings and whatnot are very figured out. So a lot of people will just simply stick to Roaches, because, well, transitioning towards even Hydralisk, you know, which is basically only 100, and then the cost of the upgrades is already a little too expensive as well. Now, in Legacy of the Void, things are not quite that flushed out yet. There are still some cool timings that happen all around, but in this specific game, we are relatively even. We are relatively even for the most part of the game for one important aspect. I will end up winning this game, by the way, but that's not really the point. I will end up winning this game for the simple reason that I start things a little bit faster. The timing on my upgrade, for example, on my +1 missile is going to be slightly faster than my opponent. The timing on my Hydralisk Den, while we are both playing very aggressively, is going to be slightly faster than my opponent. And that is honestly where you can really get an edge right now when playing Legacy of the Void. You should try and figure out, and I'm still in the process of figuring this out as well, to figure out the perfect time to start up the Hydralisk den, to slowly morph it into a Lurker den. Nice little move right there. Boom. But to morph it into a Lurker den, get a couple of Hydras standing on the side, morph those into Lurkers, because once they come out, Roaches does get evaporated. I think you should most of the time be earning or aiming for like an initial 7 or so, or 4 or so Lurkers, and eventually like 7 or 10 or so. But it seems to be the case that you can go for the Hydra den, morph it into a Lurker den while you play aggressive, so you basically buy yourself some time with that, and then you make a couple of Hydras on the side, wait for the Lurker den to finish, morph about 4 Lurkers in, which seems to be viable, and then, you know, you will basically take the engagement. The funny thing is that once they come out, like I mentioned, it feels like you've almost found a hard counter to Roaches, because Roaches, the only way you can counter them is by having a sheer domination in numbers, which doesn't really happen right now in Zerg vs Zerg, as long as you're trading evenly before that. So most of the time, really what happens is people are playing evenly until one takes the risk to either tech up to Hydralisk or Lurkers or something like that, at which point, you know, the opponent could be playing aggressive and take him out. But if they get enough time to actually get it out, you will be able to just simply dominate your opponent. So this is where the aggression starts off. I finish up the Roach speed, I finish up the +1 missile attack, and in the meantime I'm trying to drone up for my third base. Now my opponent will be aware of this, but he is obviously gonna have to respond with his own Roaches right now. So I'm trying to establish this bigger economy right now. As you can see, 54 harvests versus 47. So I'm just trying to stick around here for a little longer, make sure I get the superior economy up. Gonna be starting my +2 attack very shortly as well. There we go. And I will be able to grab a couple of drones that I made extra in the natural right now and move them towards the third base. Now, at this point, my opponent will have the superior amount of Roaches because, hey, he's been making them for a little longer. At which point, he is gonna likely start droning up right now. I'm assuming he will. He's gonna start the extra gases right now and whatnot as well. And, you know, he's gonna start moving out across the map instead. Now, it's kind of a funny little game that you play in ZVZ. It's 52 harvests right now versus 45, so I have a slight upper hand. But at this point, I decide to start up my Hydra den. And the reasoning for that is because I've seen his army. I've realized that my economy was likely gonna be bigger than his. At least I'm assuming it will be, because, you know, as long as he macroed properly, I can assume that I will have a couple more drones right now than he does. And this fight should go my way. Now, this is exactly what I wanted to discuss, okay? You will notice how incredibly close this fight is. If we pause for a second, I am +1 attack, he's +1 attack. And the simple reason of me getting the Hydralisk den out is gonna cost me, let's say, about 2-3 drones. Or 2-3 Roaches, right? This will actually come significantly into play right now, because if I would have had those 2-3 Roaches, these sort of engagement right here would actually go into my favor significantly better. Now, obviously, micro is a pretty big thing here as well, and I will be able to eventually push him back anyway. But, you know, just to show you, if my opponent would have macroed perfectly and he would have gotten that economy up a couple, you know, like 20 seconds earlier, I would have likely lost right there. That is how close this matchup usually is. Now, in the meantime, while I'm waiting for everything to finish up, I am morphing in my Lurker den. Still non-stop making Roaches and the actual upgrades, obviously. Gotta make a couple of Hydras right there. 5 of them are in the production right now. And I'm gonna start moving them forward right now. Do want to get the extra gases going, but I need to be very careful. I'm like investing a lot into an army that doesn't exist yet. Now, in order to buy the time to get that out, I am moving across the map. If I would have to play defensive right now, you can see the supply count is gonna go in his favor already. Oh, actually, now I just popped ahead again, but he was about 8 supply up right there because of the extra cost of the Roaches that I had, or the Hydra den that I needed to make. But I'm trying to buy myself some time by moving out with +2, +1 very shortly. And you can see it is coming, it is pretty okay right now to take a slight little lead right there. Did get a nice little advantage by getting a couple of these Roaches off guard. But I'm just trying to hang on right now, knowing that once the Hydralisk are morphed into Lurkers, I will be in a great position. Now, obviously, I will move the Hydras into the fight as well, if I get the chance to. But I'm just waiting right now. And at this point, my Lurker den, well, my Lurker den is almost done. It actually takes a very long amount of time. I haven't even discussed that yet. The time that it takes to actually morph a Hydra den, and then the Hydras, and then the Lurker den. It takes forever. And then actually the Lurkers as well. This is a lot longer than a Ravager. But at this point, I know that I am in a good position. At this point, once I get my lurkers going, I know I can start transitioning towards a 4th base. There's not really much that my opponent can do about this, but I'm gonna start moving them forward right now. Ideally, I set up a trap. So my opponent walks on top of the lurkers. I hold the attack fire button, and I nuke him down like that. Now, I'm gonna have to play a little aggressive, but at this point, I can execute a very powerful timing attack. So this is not a timing attack that has to do anything with upgrades. It doesn't really have anything to do with roach speed or any of that sort of stuff. I'm just purely focused on trying to get damage done as soon as lurkers come out. I know I have a huge window right now where I will be able to push out. And the question is, would I have been able to do something similar if I would have gone pure roach? Most likely, yeah. But right now, there is still a nice little timing window that you can try and capitalize on when playing high-level Zerg vs. Zerg. So hopefully this taught you a little bit more about the lurker timing push in Zerg vs. Zerg. It is definitely viable. It is just very, very difficult to pull off. But as you can see, once they do come out, you absolutely dominate the army. So 4 kills, 1 kill. 1 kill and 4 kills. So it doesn't even seem like that much, but obviously they dealt splash damage to everything around it as well. And trust me, the damage of that is absolutely enormous. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, hit the like button. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button below the video as well, so you will get a notification when I upload another one. I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I will see you in the next one.